You think it's what you're supposed to do as the next step in your career journey, but your body is telling you something different. Listen to that. And that's it. That's the extent of the advice.
Welcome to the Insurance Refocused podcast, where we're highlighting real agent stories and how they are innovating to respond to the changes and challenges happening in the independent insurance industry. My name's Lindsay, and I can't wait to introduce you to my amazing co-host, who just so happens to be my mom, Carey Wallace. Mom, how you doing today?
I'm doing really well, Lindsay. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm feeling a bit sick, but you know, everybody has their days and just gotta take some rest, drink some Gatorade, get back to it. But super pumped to be here today. How about you? You doing all right?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I feel like we had a fabulous weekend, beautiful weather, and it's really kind of nice. I actually had one of my clients come and visit me in Hilton Head, which never happens. They were from Louisiana, so it was really nice to be in your own space and actually take people around and have a little bit of business mixed in there. So we had a great weekend. Yeah.
You better watch out now. All of your clients are going to say that they need in-person meetings with you. That might have not been a great thing to say on a little public platform there.
Hey man, come on and I want them to travel with me. That would be great. Travel to me instead of me traveling to you. This is awesome. It's like a benefit, right?
That's true. That's true. Well, I'm super pumped today. We are going to be joined by Meg McKean, who I know that I've followed for like almost the entire time I've been in the industry and have never gotten the chance to grab some time. So Meg, great to have you join us. Hello.
Thanks for the invite. There's nowhere else I want to be this morning, so I'm excited to dive in and get to know each other in this way.
Totally. I know that you and I connected last year. It was right as I was starting to do some on-the-side consulting. I like to have a couple side hustles. It keeps me entertained, and I like that it just like keeps me plugged into different aspects of our industry. I also have a couple people that I do work for outside of the industry, which I think is really cool. Like it keeps you engaged with what's just like happening in the world. But one of we connected based off of one of your posts, and one of my favorite parts of that post, and honestly, the reason that I reached out with it, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to actually read what you wrote. But you say,
go for it. You'll refresh my memory as you do, because I have no idea which one it was. So I love this. Thank you.
So it says, baked into the foundation of Adjunct Advisors LLC. And for anyone listening who doesn't know, that's Meg's consulting company. Will forever be my own self-doubt, impostery feelings, disappointments, false starts, stubbed toes, and not believing in my own worthiness, knowing my worth, and then charging for it. And so much hope that if I'm feeling it, maybe someone else out there is feeling it too. So through my couple years as a mini adult, I'm only 24, so I'm fake adulting. I've totally felt all those feelings, and it was nice to like see someone who I look up to, who's like a real adult, who's had a career and decided to change things, feel the same way. So I'd love to just talk about that for a bit. Like, how in your career have you handled those feelings of imposter syndrome and knowing your worth and things like that?
Oh, I have so much I want to say already right out of the gate, but 24 years count. One of the things that I really try to do as women is encourage the experience that we have and the experience that we're building, and it all matters. And I hate when I see women diminishing their age and their experience. You know, I've been in the business for 30 years, but I started when I was in preschool. No, let's embrace where we are in this season of life and support each other and where we are in that moment. So I'm glad you're here. I hope you stick around. I hope you find a combination of gigs that work for you and feed your soul and feed the industry, because it's really neat working alongside people like you and your generation. Imposter syndrome isn't new for me. The post that you shared, that was the 5th anniversary of my business. I shared that last summer on LinkedIn, and it's all true. And it's still true today and in varying degrees, depending on the task that's in front of me and and really the way that I'm nurturing who I am in those moments, because high highs and low lows is no joke in entrepreneurship. And there is no plan that I had for my life that put me here in this moment doing this work, but it was moments of leaning into, I would say, more than discomfort, but really recognizing a misalignment of who I fundamentally am and the things that I believe I have to contribute to the industry, but also, if I can be bold and say, the world. Insurance is an important part of what makes our world go round. And making a choice, a very specific choice, to trust myself enough to start maybe making some changes that might result in a different alignment. And talking about imposter syndrome now, I'm actually coming off of a really busy month of travel. And Carey, I would love to talk to you about how you how you do what you do, because I am really balancing being effective and being present when I'm in these spaces, but also preserving my own bandwidth. And maybe we can talk about that offline or later. But one of the talks I did was about imposter syndrome, and it was in the state of Illinois for the Big I. I am a former resident of Illinois. It's where I got my insurance start. There were people in the audience that I've known for more than 20 years. And to be standing in front of them talking about imposter syndrome while I'm feeling imposter syndrome is its own sort of weird mind mess. And what I've learned over the years is that those imposter-y feelings are part of what make me who I am and give me the voice that I have and the perspective that I have. And I spent a long time trying to compensate for what I thought I wasn't. And it was when I started to really lean into what I already was, all the things that were already inside me. I've always been a good listener. I've always been a strong communicator. I've always been strong in my convictions and knowing what's right and what's wrong. And when I started leaning into those things and not trying to be the loudest voice in the room or the person with the biggest energy or the taking up the most proverbial space, it all felt lighter and it felt more in alignment. And then once you do it, it becomes its own, I don't want to simplify, it's not a drug, of course, but it becomes the fuel that you keep going, because you realize, wait a second, there's something here. And instead of dreading getting up in the morning and going and doing this work, I get to actually celebrate the work that I'm doing, and it's using the best parts of who I am. I never thought I would find that in the insurance industry. I have repelled my insurance career from day one. I don't love insurance. I am not an insurance nerd. I'm very vocal about that because a lot of us aren't. It's okay to be grateful that an industry has provided a livelihood and opportunities, and also wonder what the heck you're doing here some days. And I'm just honest. I think that's the bottom line, is I speak my truth. I can do that because I have my own megaphone, if you will. And then that sort of freedom is heavy, but it also is really, really powerful. And I'm enjoying this particular moment in time when I get to talk about all these things.
So 5 years ago, or 6 years ago now, because that was a year ago when you made the post, you started your LLC. So you travel speaking about kind of these topics of imposter syndrome and like mental health within companies. Who is your like target audience? Are you speaking to agencies? Are you speaking to groups? Who are you speaking to?
All of the above. So we love to talk about a niche in our industry, right? So my niche is the insurance industry, which drives some people bananas because they're like, well, do you work with agents? Do you work with carriers? Do you work with tech companies? And the answer is yes, I work with all of them, because the work that I do has nothing to do with insurance as a product. Because I've been in the industry for 25 years, I know how to speak the language. I understand when we say 1-1 and 7-1, what that means for us as professionals. That doesn't translate in healthcare or hospitality. And so I very much stay in my insurance lane. But for me, finding that alignment was, I don't do anything technical. I know how to underwrite. I am a licensed agent still, but we're not talking about coinsurance and deductibles and actual cash value. That is not the best use of my skills. There are people out there, and I love to refer them when those opportunities come up. But I live in what I call the squishy place. And so it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but I like to talk about feelings. And I would sum up everything I do as really helping people to amplify the human experience that we have as insurance professionals. So the two topics right now that are on the top of Every conference organizer's list and every organization that brings me in are burnout and imposter syndrome. And so those have sort of risen up as the things that people want to talk about. Interesting, we get into things like perfectionism and procrastination and the ominous time management, which we all know we can't manage time, but we certainly can manage what we choose to do with the time that we have. And so depending on the audience, I can speak differently about those things. But in general, it's really appreciating and acknowledging, particularly post-COVID, that our relationship with work has really changed, but our relationship in many ways with ourselves has changed. And going all the way back to the beginning, I didn't always feel that I could bring my whole messy, complicated self to work. There was always something I had to kind of leave at the door or hide because it wasn't part of the corporate objective, or it wasn't what everybody else was doing, or it showed weakness or vulnerability, which were things that we were not celebrating back then. And for a variety of reasons, it's just become more and more welcome, particularly, I think, as we start to think about programming and how the industry is changing, and how do we get people to continue to come to our events and be interested in learning in this way. Speakers make or break these events. If you don't have, it's like I just said to somebody the other day, would you go to a Taylor Swift concert without Taylor Swift being there, even if the lighting was really good and even if the food and beverage was great and the sound effects were great? Like, I'm not Taylor Swift, please don't misunderstand. However, she puts on a great show, and I think that at the end of the day, everything else is just table stakes. You've got to have people with resonant messages to deliver them. So I'm riding the wave, as they say.
So, Meg, I have been fangirling you for, I don't even know, maybe 2 years now. I have no idea. It is such a breath of fresh air having you on and getting to interact with you. And I don't know why I haven't done it sooner. So my apologies, because I have been truly missing out. I am telling you that for sure. I mean, holy cow. I have so much to say. I can't even, we said 20 minutes, 25 minutes. We lied. Just so you know, we straight up lied. So here's what I want to talk a little bit about imposter syndrome, because what you said, I feel to my core. I mean, obviously I'm an entrepreneur, started my career in a startup. The entire time I've worked, I felt like an imposter. But the reality is people look at someone who's older than them with experience and say, well, they have it all together. Social media does it, like all kinds of reasons that we feel that way. You think your teacher has it together. You think that your college professor has it together. And the reality is no one does. Like, those that are great are the ones that are doing things that push them into the world of being uncomfortable. And that part of that is feeling some imposter syndrome, because if you do what's only comfortable, you're never, ever going to be great. You just aren't. It's part of growing, right? So I think putting a face on that and actually communicating it in a way that others can say, wait a minute, it's okay that I don't know everything. It's okay that I maybe have questions and doubts about myself, but I can still be an expert in something while having doubts about that is incredible. I mean, it really is. And I see this whole evolution of people rallying around this idea. COVID did some cool things to our society, if you ask me, because it allowed us to actually be more gracious with each other, right? Anyway, that's what I have to say about it, because I am telling you, in order for me to be successful in what I do, I have to be an expert in my craft. No question around that. But that doesn't mean I know everything. And it is okay that I also feel like an imposter standing on the stage, talking about the fact what it takes to run a business. And I'm also a small business owner as well. And it's not an easy thing, right? So, and thank you for saying that is my point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I will go first. I'm happy to go first and share some of these things, because when I do, I'm met with so much support and solidarity. And it's the safety, and I use that word really thoughtfully, but we didn't always have that. I think about women that are much further ahead of me on their path, and the options were different for them. And so I respect very much their journey. And want to use this moment of time in the position that I'm in to make sure that the journey for the women coming behind us can be different. And it comes with a lot of responsibility, but also a lot of, it's really cool and really satisfying. I want to add a layer to what you just shared, Carey. And one of the things that I have really repelled and actually speak about is some of the bogus advice that we get as women that doesn't, it's well-intentioned, and it's usually coming from someone who's older and wiser and has achieved some level of success by their standards and maybe has forgotten a little bit about what it's like to be in these moments. And the idea of, life begins out when you exit your comfort zone, and do it afraid. And it's not bad advice, but to me, it really lessens the human experience that we're having in those moments when, I am years into my own journey of doing the work, if you will, on myself, working with a therapist, using different modalities to really understand my relationship with anxiety first and foremost, but how that has impacted my career, my intimate relationships, my friendships, my familial relationships. All of that has been done outside of the insurance industry, but absolutely affects the choices that I make in my business and how I'm showing up. And one of the things that's really resonant for me and I want to share is it's okay to ask yourself the question if your boss or your superior is presenting you with an opportunity and it feels like something you should do, to ask yourself the question, is this feeling I'm having, this tightness in my belly or my neck or my back or this racing heart that I've got, is this because it's new and different and scary? Or is this because it's totally out of alignment with who I am? If you are an individual contributor underwriter and someone has tapped you on the shoulder to be in leadership and you think it's what you're supposed to do as the next step in your career journey, but your body is telling you something different, listen to that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. That's the extent of the advice, is our bodies are telling us something. The noise in our brains are telling us something. And a lot of the messaging we get is you do it afraid, do it anyway, power through it, fake it till you make it, put your head down. It won't always be. No, you don't have to do that. You have other choices, and trusting yourself enough, which is the thing I'm working on literally right now, is I have forever put others' needs to simplify and prioritize their needs above my own. What would that look like if I chose myself? If I said no to certain things and I said, yes, but I need more pay, yes, at a higher rate, or no, on my terms. Those are really powerful bits of evidence that we can do those big, scary, ominous things if you want to. And that's the part that I've always felt like I was doing it wrong, but actually doing it absolutely right.
So you could not be more right. And I wasn't going to go here, but now I'm going to go here because I love when people give advice like hustle. Like you have to do more, you have to work harder, you have to do this, you have to do that. I struggled personally with quitting. I struggled with stopping something because it wasn't right in order to move in a different direction, because I love my team. I love the work. I love the this. I love the that. What will people think? Like on and on and on, and put myself in a situation I should have never, ever, ever been, to the point where my children, who has joined us, would walk by and like shut my laptop, telling me like, listen, you're working too much. You're burnt out. You are over the edge. And I still did it. And so it's important sometimes to A, listen to your body, no question around it. And B, trust yourself, like absolutely trust yourself that it's okay, that it's different than what everybody else is saying success looks like. Success is what you define it to be. So I was at a association invited me to come speak at their women's group. It was the hardest speech I've ever given. I'm on stages a fair amount, which I'm very, very fortunate.
Yes.
I'm super grateful that people have embraced what I do, and they've invited me to come speak about it. And my content is I'm very comfortable talking about agency valuation and financials and helping run your business, like all of those things. I'm even comfortable with how do you navigate partnership or perpetuation planning. But when someone asks me to come talk about my journey as an entrepreneur, I'll tell you what, it's hard, really hard to be that vulnerable in front of a group of people. And my topic was redefining success. What does success
Mm.
mean at many different points in your life? So I'm going to pose the question to you. How do you define success and how has that evolved?
Hmm. Thank you for doing the work you're doing, because we are leading by example, and that's a lot. Sometimes it can feel like pressure, but to be a leader and to be an expert in the thing that you do and also be willing to show some of your own vulnerabilities shows other aspiring and current leaders that's what leadership looks like today. That's what the generation coming into the industry is demanding of us as leaders, and it's hard. And so you
Mhm.
going first really does pave the way for others. So thank you for that. We clearly speak on a lot of the same topics because this is a slide. What is success? Literally, it's part of all of my presentations, and it does change and it does evolve. And I imagine when I say this, many listeners will resonate. My definition of success as a young woman coming into the business was a stable job with a regular paycheck, making more money each year than you did the year prior, getting promotions when it was agreed that I was ready for a promotion, and maybe taking new opportunities in different organizations as those would present. And if you do that and you put money in your 401k and you save, 10% of your whatever, I'm not a financial planner, but whatever makes sense for you, you will be successful. And there was always without a doubt a ominous dollar amount tied. I didn't know what it was. It was just more of whatever you did last year. And I think anybody in sales can relate to that. Now it's freedom, period. It's freedom to do the work that I want to do, that's meaningful for me and impactful for those that I work with, at a price that's respectful to me and appropriate for the work and the value that I'm contributing. And it's spending my time and energy in the ways that I want to. Is it perfect? No. And I always want to add that disclaimer, because what you see, as you well know, on social media is the glossed up, cleaned up, makeup on, heels on version. And there are many days when I sit in the corner of my couch distracting myself on Netflix or my latest thing. And granny hobbies, these are a thing apparently, like knitting and crochet. Mine is cross stitch. So I've been doing cross stitch like it's going out of style. And part of it is a distraction. It's getting me off my phone. It's using a different part of my brain. I'm very analytical, so I like putting things in order. Those are all things that are also happening while I'm flying around the country doing what people see me doing on social media. I am very much, and I have resigned myself in a good way, that I will always be a work in progress. But the goal now, success to me is, am I getting the Sunday scaries? Am I going to bed on Sunday night dreading what's coming on Monday morning? If that's happening, something's off. I need to set a new boundary. I need to work on saying no to the wrong things, yes to the right things, and listen to my body if my body needs something. It's not a perfect science, and it doesn't happen overnight, because I didn't have freedom when I started my business. It was the opposite. I was making no money. So the pressure and the stress was, is this even going to be a viable thing? Did I just make literally the worst decision in my career? And then COVID happened. I was about 18 months into my business when COVID happened. And then it just became, I just want to have a business at the end of this. What I thought was going to be two weeks or 3 months, years later, I just want to be here and have a presence. And so it has evolved as I have evolved, and it will likely evolve again, but it is so very different than it was when I was just starting out. And I think that's the lesson, is that we change. And, I've only touched on the things that I've experienced professionally. I've also been married and divorced in that period, been through some, long-term relationships that we would say didn't work out. They served their purpose. I did my time. They did what they were supposed to do, but made the decision 4 years ago to sell my home and all my things and start traveling and living nomadically. So I spent the last 4 years living out of the trunk of my car, hitting all but two of the United States, and really living my life while working instead of the other way around. And the other thing I'll say is it's okay if you disagree with everything I just said. If the stability, right? Like the stability that comes from a paycheck every 2 weeks and knowing, what the map of your life is going to look like for some people, that is success. And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem I had was my blueprint was only that. And I think about this as well. I'm the proud aunt of a 10 and 12-year-old, my brother's kids, and my niece is the younger. She's the 10-year-old. And on one side of her family, she has, I would say, very traditional aunt and uncle, 3 cousins. And then she's got Aunt Meg over on this side who, lives in her car. I don't actually live in my car, but never knows where I am, never knows what I'm up to. And it's really important for me that she sees the choice that she has in both of those options. And neither is right or wrong, but that what she sees is available to her, and is closer maybe to reach than she might think. And that's really important to me as a woman and as a person doing my thing, living my life.
So the reality of freedom looks different to everyone. Like it really does. And I kind of dislike that our society has this idea of what success looks like, and you buy into it until you figure out a way to define it for yourself. And it's super interesting. And I also dislike that my path to success or my choices have nothing to do with Lindsay's choices or your choices or anyone else. But um, there have been times in my career where you're not met with understanding and a warm embrace. You're more met with judgment. And I'm thinking about, like, when people have children, the choice to stay home or to work, there's judgment on both sides of that decision, sadly. And I do think that I see over the last 2 years with the women in insurance movement, I'm going to call it a movement, that changing a bit, because I think people are telling their stories and they're thinking about it differently. And I hope that it continues. I truly do. I'm certainly going to do my part to continue to share the things that aren't really fun to share, to be quite honest. I mean, but it also helps other people know that their journey, as crazy and jagged as it might be, is okay as well. So, for me, living out of a car would be really tough, although it would be very freeing because I love to travel. It would be very, very freeing to be able to do that. For me, it was selling a house that we lived in for 20 years in a place that I had all kinds of friends and family, and uprooting my family, moving to a place I know nobody, and everybody seems to be 20 years older than me. We live in Hilton Head. So, it's so it's, it was different, and I miss people. I miss my life, but I also needed a fresh start. And it probably wasn't the best financial decision in the world, but it's been awesome for us. Like it didn't matter. I needed a fresh start. I was at a point where, we needed to start again. And it was a super traumatic situation, and it gave us the way to do that. So, everybody has to find freedom and find their journey. There's no two ways around that. I love that you've put it in a way that it doesn't look the same for anyone. It's not going to look the same for Lindsay. Her choice to freedom is going to be completely different than mine. And that's great. Like 100%. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really beautiful. And, motherhood is not part of my story. I thought that it would be, and I'm very open. When I was married, was navigating infertility and really thought that, come hell or high water, I would be a mom. And am very thoughtful that the majority of women in my community are moms. They are navigating full-time jobs and full-time motherhood roles and some other roles beyond that as well. And so what feels possible to me, because I'm single for all intents and purposes and don't have children and can make the way that I'm living feel out of reach or out of touch even, or just impossible and even slightly ridiculous. Fine. That all may be true for you. But when I left the corporate world, 7 years ago, I took a year off. I call it an unpaid sabbatical. Well, frankly, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. If it wasn't going to be insurance, then what was it going to be? And I had a spreadsheet, little Google Doc that had a bunch of tabs at the bottom. And one of them said, what gets in the way? And there were things on there like health insurance. I don't have a partner. I can't hop on somebody else's benefit plan. It is still to this day the single most expensive line item in my business, in my books. How am I going to navigate that? What about no PTO? Every vacation that I take is on, I'm not working on those days. How's that going to work? Financially, am I willing to take what was a huge step back financially? And I have no problem exposing that because I didn't have a full roster of clients when I was ready to flip the switch. I had nothing, and I took a year off. So I was literally starting from ground zero, and I was doing work that I'd never done before. I had never coached another producer. I didn't have the biggest book in the industry that I was pulling from. I literally had a belief that I could do it differently and maybe even better. And that was it. That's what I had, and a really affordable mortgage at the time. And the what gets in the way is where a lot of us stop. We fill up the spreadsheet with all the impossibles. I can't do it. And a lot of it's that tangible stuff. It's money, it's time, it's logistics. But you mentioned earlier, it's the what would other people think? And when we talk about what's the definition of success, we also have to talk about what's the definition of failure. And mine was always, what are other people going to think? What is this going to say about me? I would like to say that I don't think that way anymore. I absolutely do. I still care more than I care to admit what people think. I care about how many likes and comments I get on a LinkedIn post. I care about when I see somebody else that does work similar to mine and they get the gig and I don't. I care about all that stuff. I am human and I am imperfect, and I can't show up the way that I do if I lie to you and myself and say that those things don't sometimes hit me at the core. However, if we choose to start chipping away at that what gets in the way, that process, like I said earlier, when we're talking about imposter syndrome, we start to build that confidence muscle. I had a guest on my own podcast, Dr. Michelle Morkert, and she talked about confidence, that confidence comes from doing hard things. We don't just wake up with confidence one day and then we're ready to go do the hard things. We have to continuously build that muscle. And in doing so, prove to ourselves, because that's the only one whose opinion matters, to prove to ourselves that we are on the path that's right for us. And this is all really powerful language and sounds like, oh, it's so easy. It's not. It is not. I cannot say that enough and loudly enough. But for me, having that list and starting to literally chip away at what are the reasons I've convinced myself that this is impossible. Maybe it's somebody listening who is a full-time parent to young kids, and they're thinking about, well, if I make this sharp left turn, which could be going out on your own, it could also be doing like I did, leaving the carrier side and going to the agency side. Or maybe you leave an underwriting role and you move into claims, or you move to a technology company. There's all sorts of options within the industry for us to start to build new muscles. How can you sit down and be not honest, but also calculated enough to just look at the facts? Well, how much money would you need to make? Mm-hmm. How much money do you have to have in order to make sure that your kids can go to college if that's something that you prioritize? And a lot of these things are a lot closer than we think they are, but history has told us to just play it safe. And that's, our body is always going to give us the path to the safer choice, the safer option.
No doubt.
Well, Meg, excuse me. Well, Meg, it's been awesome to have you. I absolutely love all of the topics we talked about. I feel like we could talk for hours and hours on end. If someone who's listening wants to reach out and learn more about you and Adjunct Advisors and all of the things you have going on, where's the best place for them to reach you?
Thank you. I will start with the easy question first. Adjunctadvisors.com is my website. You can also just Google me. I'm fortunate to have a pretty highly Googleable name, so you'll find me one way or the other. I'm working on boundaries with social media. I am present on LinkedIn, but a lot less. So if there's a specific ask, I would highly suggest using the contact form on my website rather than a DM, because I'm just not I'm just not there. Like I think the algorithm expects us to be.
Amen.
Days,
Amen to that.
right?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And it's tough. It's a whole other conversation that I'm working through right now is that my relationship with social media. But thank you. Thank you for not just inviting me to be here, but for deciding that these conversations are worth the time and the space, along with a lot of the other more businessy things that we talk about in our industry. I believe it, of course, but we grow because there's numbers. And so thank you for making sure that these conversations are happening out there.
Well, Meg, I cannot wait for our next conversation. I'm happy to talk to you about anything, and I'm so very excited that you joined us today. I also hope we end up at the same event and we get to actually speak in person. So maybe we'll just make that happen, because I love your journey, and you're even better in person than you were than I had in my mind. So I'm super excited that you chose to join us. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's make it happen. I would love that too.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Insurance Refocused podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review so you'll never miss us. Want to learn more about how Agency Focus can help you grow your agency? Head to agency-focus.com or email Carey directly at carey@agency-focus.com. If you need to get in touch with me, feel free to shoot me an email at lindsay@agency-focus.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.